It's either, what's the date today, the 3rd?
Yeah, December 3rd.
I think it's either the 2nd through the 9th or the 9th. It's 25%.
Long time no see. Survived open enrollment. There you go.
It would be like $50.
Oh, right.
That would be good. Plus, I get a senior discount if I go on.
But it's either the, it's saying 2nd or 9th.
Pam's here, and then he's here, kind of like Alicia.
But there's not a third.
Yeah. Usually they run it for about the chair.
That's a smoker deal.
Yeah.
Almost
Yeah, if that's okay. Yeah, just the 1 or 2 or something. We don't need a big thing, you know.
The little one costs more than the big one.
I should get the one. I brought one for the police department. Yeah. And they never use it. They charge a regular coffee maker thing with blankets, so I should bring it. At least for meetings.
The worst thing with them is you're running out of the K-cups. That's what sucks.
I bought some. I have some at home. That's okay. Do you want a wheelchair?
No, this one's fun.
Are you into my now?
I'm back.
I bought the little plastic cups at home. You fill with your own coffee.
I did, but it doesn't taste the same.
Oh, yeah, it's again.
I did. I think I bet. Yeah.
Putting it out in the trash.
Yeah, the little thing you put in.
Anyway.
No, I think that'd be. I'm a supporter of it. I'll bring my own shirt.
I may run out of a lot of things.
Can't get enough of that, right? Can't say it.
Actually, I'll drop this on.
It's going around, man. There's a stomach bug.
Because I don't like
Saying I was going to bring my Army Navy just approved. That's right in this report here in a row. You were a Marine Corps, Navy.
but I haven't.
What do they call it? Uber.
Navy actually modeled their alternate
I guess. I don't think you can back. I don't think it's a good time to be talking.
I'm surprised he hasn't come out before now.
You're kind of scared me when I walk in.
Insensitive timing. Too soon? Too soon. Too soon? Go out there.
Doing here.
Nice to have you sit. You can just step down and go ask for it. I can't find the book about the next.
I'll track him down.
She didn't make it.
Good. Yes, Bert.
Yeah.
Saturday available.
Basically said he didn't make it. Right, because we showed him that. I just, what are those people? The auditors need to see.
Okay.
That's gonna be exciting. We have 7 people here. Well, 6. Technically 7. So we have a name? You're on the ball.
And a name tag
Wow.
for events. Alrighty, Trustee Romanello, are you ready for your oath of office?
Yes, ma'am.
You want to just stand right up here?
Sure.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I state your name. I, Jim Romano,
Solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution,
that I will support the Constitution,
the laws of the United States,
the laws of the United States,
the Constitution and
the
statutes
Constitution and statutes
of the state of Colorado,
of the state of Colorado,
and the ordinances of the town of Nutley,
and the ordinances of the town of Nutley,
and that I will faithfully perform perform the duties
and I will faithfully perform the duties
of the office of trustee
of the office of trustee
for the town of Monument,
for the town of Monument,
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's official.
So we good?
So this is what it looks like from up here, okay.
I call to order this regular meeting of the Monument Board of Trustees, December 3rd, 2018. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Hogan, will you take roll, please?
Mayor Wilson,
Here.
Trustee Bornstein,
Yes.
Trustee Clark is noted absent, Trustee Kootman,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott. Here. Trustee Romanello,
Here.
Trustee Stevens.
Here.
Okay, before us we have a consent agenda and a regular agenda. Is there any modifications to the agenda? I would like to make one modification, and that's the addition, well, pending resolution 30-2018. I'd like to add in a executive session for specific legal advice regarding a specific legal question. Do I have a second? Okay. I have a motion, or a,
Where does that fall on the agenda as far as when we're going to have the executive session? Right after the appointment?
I was just gonna save it till later, before item 7. Okay.
And that's regarding the resolution 32-2018.
No, that's pending on the passing of resolution.
Okay.
Do we have any other modifications before we vote on that? Seeing none, I have a motion and a second.
Trustee Bornstein,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Trustee Kootman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott,
Yes.
Trustee Stevens,
Yes.
Trustee Romanello.
Yes.
That motion passes 6-0. Do I have any other modifications to the agenda? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the agenda
I
as
move to-
modified?
I move to approve the agenda.
We have a motion to approve the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second?
We have a motion and multiple seconds. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Romanello,
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein,
Yes.
Trustee Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Trustee Kootman.
Yes.
That motion passed 6-0. First item on the agenda, appointment of town attorney, resolution number 30-2018, a resolution appointing Joseph Rivera, special counsel with Murphy, Dahl, Burry, and Randall LLP as town attorney, and authorizing the mayor to enter into a legal service agreement between the town of Monument, Murphy, Dahl, and Burry, and Rened LLP. Ms. Smith, do you have anything to add to that?
No, actually didn't know my name was on there. I had forwarded you all the amended contract that Mr. Rivera had given us. I got no response back, therefore assuming that it was fine. And we did make a few adjustments that we had suggested, and you have that contract in your packet tonight.
Okay, any further discussion by board?
I just have one question, and shame on me for not knowing this, but will the attorney also be taking ownership as prosecutor during court?
Not at this time.
Is that something that we plan on addressing before?
In the near future, probably. But right now, we're not. So.
Right now, we currently have somebody
Yeah, right
in
now
place
Barry
for that.
Shoup is acting as prosecuting attorney once a month.
Is that on a year, is that on a
Well,
is
it's
that
on a-
calendar year, I
it
should
would
ask?
need to, be noticed before it was taken away. Plus, Mr. Rivera's office, we have to make sure that's something
Okay.
they're willing to do as well, so.
Maybe that's something we get on a discussion item for next
Okay.
meeting. Thank you.
Just to clarify, Miss Corley didn't have anything to do with that prior, did she?
No, she did not,
Okay, I'm
but
just,
she was going to,
Oh.
but we just never got there, so.
okay, all right.
Mr. Shoup's been doing it for, well, ever.
But if I'm correct, it is the objective of whoever sits in place of our town attorney also maintains responsibility of that role,
Yes,
not
sir.
to have two separate entities.
You're correct.
Okay, thank you.
And I have one point of just of clarification or a question that I need clarification on. CIRSA comes in and does provide attorney in certain cases. What is the difference between the role of CIRSA and the role of Mr. Rivera?
Mr. Rivera may want to address this, but in the past, the town attorney has taken care of board meetings, planning commissions, board of adjustment meetings, answered questions of staff and the board. If we have a specialty need, being a water attorney, like we use Bob Crossa, we used to go out for land use attorney, but I think Mr. Rivera's firm is good with land use issues. So it's just figuring out, pardon me, where the fit is. If it's something special, if it's a workman's comp, for instance, case that CIRSA is handling, they like to appoint their own attorneys. So Mr. Rivera is pretty much the attorney for this group, and when it falls into a specialty thing that would be outside of the purview, it would go to CIRSA attorney or to water attorney.
Thank you.
Does that sound right? Okay.
Any further comments? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve resolution number 30-2018, resolution appointing Joseph Rivera, special counsel with Murray, Dahl, Beery, and Renaud LLP as town attorney, and authorizing the mayor to enter into a legal services agreement between the town of Monument and Murray, Dahl, Beery, and Renaud LLP.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
I missed who seconded that.
Trustee,
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Trustee Romanello?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes?
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Ms. Hogan, can you read the oath of office to?
Are you willing to enter into an oath of office? We'll just do it in the same location.
It'd really not be funny if you said no.
I, Joseph Rivera,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
and the laws of the United States,
and the laws of the United States,
the Constitution and statutes
the Constitution and statutes
of the state of Colorado,
of the state of Colorado,
and the ordinances of the town of Monument,
and the ordinances of the town of Monument,
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
of the office of town attorney
of the office of town attorney
for the town of Monument,
for the town of Monument,
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Welcome.
Now you're in the hot seat.
One item I forgot to mention at the beginning of the meeting, the public hearing regarding the final plat and final PD site for Monument Ridge has been postponed. It was scheduled for today. It will be held at a later date, and public posting will be posted in the standard time frame prior to then. Moving on, ordinance number 24-2018, an ordinance approving site plan and final plat of Jackson Creek North, filing number 1. Ms. Jones.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. There you go. So the first public hearing item before you tonight is a site plan and final plat for Jackson Creek North. referred to as Project DA 12, 2018, and before you as Ordinance 24. So the area we're discussing is shown on this simplified vicinity map because it's a little easier to look at. It is north of Leather Chaps Drive, east of Jackson Creek Parkway. And if we take a look at this aerial, it's a little easier to see. It's located essentially between the Remington Hill neighborhood on the east and Jackson Creek Self-Storage on the west, just north of Leather Chaps Drive. So a summary of this project is a little over, or it's approximately 11 and a half acres. This is in Regency Park. It's Regency Park zoning PRD 6, which is a residential zoning. So the plat and site plan before you, I'm going to address them essentially as the same because there's very little difference in this specific instance. There's 31 lots included, 3 tracks, and 2 roadways. The extension of Harness Road and the creation of a new roadway internal to this project called Hallmark Trail. Again, a site plan and final plat, but I'm sort of just presenting them as one because they're essentially the same. And I'm going over the highlights because, as you see, all applicable code standards are met with this proposal, so they're not asking for anything outside of exactly what the code outlines. So here's another depiction to sort of show you what's being proposed. Again, this is a little easier to look at than the actual plat, so that's why I have this on the screen for you. Again, there's 31 residential lots. This is filling in that gap between those 2 existing developments, and the plat does include the Harness Road extension connecting those 2 pieces. There's currently, and I have a better graphic for you here in just a minute, but there's currently a connection there at Jackson Creek Parkway on the west, and then Harness is constructed east of Bowstring to go into the Remington Hill neighborhood, so this will connect those 2 small pieces of harness to make it actually go somewhere. This illustrates for you the 3 tracks that are included, A, B, and C, as you see, and then they serve a couple of purposes. Obviously, landscaping, buffering, sidewalks, mailboxes, things like that. There's also an emergency access. They're located off of Leather Chaps Drive. The fire department did review that and has found that to be acceptable if they were to need an additional way in or out that would serve that purpose. And then the yellow segment, the yellow tract in particular, the applicant has worked with El Paso County Parks Department and provided what they needed on the plat for a future connection of a regional trail that will go through that area. As I mentioned. So that coordination did happen with the county. They have everything that they need at this time. I don't know when that will actually be constructed. That will be on the county's timeline. So this project is in the Tri-View Metro District. Everything having to do with this project, including the landscape areas that they will maintain, including the roadways and the connections and the sidewalks and that type of thing, have been reviewed by Tri-View, as well as their engineers, and found to be acceptable, and the developer has worked quite closely with them to get that where it needs to be. And then, as I mentioned, the important connection. So this shows us just a little bit better. This is one of the most up-to-date aerials we have. You can see on the far right side of your screen is the Remington Hill neighborhood. Again, currently the only access to that neighborhood is via Bowstring, and then there's that little portion of Harness. That's the only portion that's been constructed so far, which is actually in that neighborhood. And then newly constructed is the connection of Harness at Jackson Creek Parkway, which serves as an access point for both the self-storage and the senior living project to the north. So this project would actually connect those 2. So that's an exciting development with this project to have that connected, so that those folks that live in Remington Hill have 2 ways out. And again, just little pieces of roadway don't make a whole lot of sense, so we always like to see those be connected and go somewhere. So this was before your Planning Commission last month on November 14th. The Planning Commission discussed a whole variety of things related and not related to the project, included those that are outlined here. There's some discussion about Bowstring Road, which, as I mentioned, is already constructed and already there, not really a part of this project. Some questions about roadway classifications, sidewalks, plowing and maintenance as done by Tri-View, traffic, even some questions about height restrictions and things like that. As I mentioned previously, This project is guided by the PR6 standards, PRD6 standards of Regency Park, so it is outlined in the code. So they will just simply meet those parameters that are already in place. The height restrictions are the same for, that is same in this project as all other PRD6. It's actually the same as pretty much all of our residential neighborhoods. But we clarified a couple of those things with the Planning Commission. 2 members of the public did speak at the hearing. They essentially asked similar questions to what the Planning Commission had asked, and ultimately the Planning Commission did recommend approval. So the, kind of stole my own thunder with this next slide, didn't I? Planning Commission recommends approval of the project based on the findings that the proposed development complies with all standards and criteria for approval. And staff is available to answer any questions now and or after the applicant presents.
Anybody?
Just a real simple question. I think it's great you're saying harness, which will eventually will be a go-through from there to Jackson Creek, if I'm correct? You were
Correct.
saying? And will that be open to the public as the development goes, or is when the develop's completed? I mean, I think this is excellent. I'm just wondering, so that'll be a go-through automatically for traffic, so to speak?
Right, absolutely. It'll be a full public right-of-way connecting, again, that existing little portion that's currently there and then the portion that's in Remington Hill. Is the question exactly at what point it will open?
Yeah, maybe I should have been more specific, I'm sorry.
Sure, I would defer to the applicant at whether the roadway is constructed first, or I would assume it has to be constructed before the rest of the lots just for access, but I won't guess and I'll let them clarify that.
And then my add-on to that will be, because that'll probably be used for other avenues of residency up in that area, will there be deemed the need for a traffic light, or, and I know that falls into Tri-View when you hit Jackson Creek, but those are just 2 questions
At Jackson
I have.
Creek Parkway?
Yes, ma'am.
So the traffic study did look at that. Basically, at this point, it's been determined that at some point in the future, a traffic light could be warranted at Jackson Creek Parkway and Harness. It's not warranted at this time. Again, the traffic study, that was reviewed both by the town's on-call engineers as well as the engineers for Tri-View, and they did agree with that assessment. My understanding as a part of the Jackson Creek Parkway widening project that's coming soon, that they are doing things like installing the conduits at the intersection in the event that it's sometime in the future that a light is warranted, even though it's not at this time. So
Okay.
all being considered, but these 31 lots simply didn't justify it yet.
You answered my questions. Thank you very much.
Noted here, it looks like the planning commission approved with a 4-3 vote.
Correct.
Do you recall specifically, I guess, the concerns that were addressed? Was it mostly surrounding safety is what I've kind of gathered around from the addition of this? And then the sidewalks and things like that? What exactly, I guess, were the concerns?
So there were no specific reasons stated when they actually made their votes, but I can tell you what was discussed.
I would appreciate just a little bit more insight, especially if there were safety concerns.
There was quite a bit of discussion about the sidewalk on the east side of Bowstring, and it really related, at the end of the day, from my understanding, to a plowing issue, whether it was covered or with snow or not. We have
Interesting.
spoken with Tri-View since then, and it sounds like that's simply a matter of handling that. The other discussion, let's see, and I believe, oh, I'm sorry, wrong way. I just wanted to go back to that list. My apologies. There we go. So again, sort of the sidewalks, there were some questions about the roadway classifications. Harness and Bowstring are both minor collectors, and so we sort of went through that. Those cross-sections are approved by the town and by Tri-View, and so we talked a little bit sort of about what that means, and there were some questions and things like that. And then again, there were questions about height restrictions, the types of homes that would be built there, variety of discussion that way. Again, at the end of the day, it really came back to they could build whatever the parameters of that zoning district allowed.
Right.
And so we answered those questions, and then the vote, again, there was no specific reason stated at the time of the vote. So
Right.
that's really the best I could
So to your,
summarize.
well, and I appreciate that. So I'm just basically to clarify, to your knowledge, there wasn't any significant safety concerns that said, hey, putting this here is putting anybody at danger or at risk or
There
anything
were
like that?
definitely questions
Okay.
about that. There may have been opinions that way, but certainly everything that I have in terms of the reports and the studies and the engineers that have reviewed it, that didn't seem to be the case.
Okay. And I appreciate that. I just wanted a little bit more insight. I mean, a 4-3 is not a, you know, a all or nothing type of vote, so to fully understand the safety concerns. I would agree 31 lots and almost 12 acres seems not too unrealistic, so,
Sure.
thank you.
Any additional questions for Ms. Jones?
Has TriView acknowledged that they have the resources to cover the plowing, et cetera, adding this small neighborhood?
Yes, that has not been an issue. We being staff as well as the applicant have both been in contact with Triview regarding this project and a number of times that it has not come up as a problem.
Okay. Would the applicant like to step up?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Board. My name is Mike Taylor. I represent the applicant, Vision Development, Inc. I've got a PowerPoint that I'm gonna run through real quickly just to highlight some of the major facets of the project as we see it. As Jennifer talked about, the subdivision encompasses approximately 11.5 acres. I think you're oriented as far as where that's located. And again, as depicted in the plat and the site plan, will be subdivided into 31 single-family detached lots. It includes the addition of Hallmark Trail, which would be the interior road indicated there as a public road, provide access to the lots and the tracks within the subdivision. And as Jennifer indicated, the extension of Harness Road West from Bowstring to connect to Jackson Creek Parkway. And following up to kind of what she talked about with regard to Bowstring Road, that is an existing minor collector road. Really, the activities associated with this development would simply be adding a detached sidewalk and some rock within the distance between the curb and that sidewalk. We've talked to TriView about that. They reviewed the landscaping plan and we responded to their request with regard to what they wanted to see there. So with regard to Bowstring, we're really not doing anything along that collector road. It's obviously fully installed to the curb line at this point in time. As Jennifer noted, it does include, this subdivision will include the extension of Harness from Bowstring to Jackson Creek Parkway. Mr. Romanello, in answer to your question, timing-wise on that, we will have that roadway in prior to completion of the development of the lot, simply to facilitate access for development purposes. We haven't discussed with TriView yet or the town really what the projected opening, and I'm sorry, it was Trustee Bornstein, my mistake. We really haven't talked with them the timing yet with regard to opening of that, but like everything else out there with regard to traffic, we'll be coordinating that with them. As Jennifer noted, and as the trustees are aware, you know, with regard to submittals on a subdivision like this, we're required to commission an independent traffic study and have that submitted to the town staff for review. In this instance, not only did the town's engineers review that, but because it's located within TriView and because of the implications of the Jackson Creek Parkway future widening, TriView also engaged an independent engineer to review it. As she indicated, the initial indications within our traffic study were that there were no warrants met yet for a traffic signal at Jackson Creek Parkway, and both the town's engineers and TriView's engineers agreed with that assessment. In addition, within the subdivision, we'll obviously be installing wet and dry utilities within the right-of-way of the constructed roads, and we'll be dedicating open space tracks to be maintained by TriView, and as Jennifer noted, a track suitable for extension of the El Paso County Regional Trail System. The plat and site plan also provide for the installation of landscaping by us that'll enhance the site, and we believe it's compatible with adjacent properties. And again, we consulted with TriView with regard to what those improvements will be, the nature of those improvements, because ultimately, even though those tracks are dedicated to the town, TriView is ultimately responsible for maintenance. As Jennifer noted, this property that's subject to this subdivision is currently zoned PRD 6. This is technically a site plan. It's not a PD site plan. We are not proposing anything that differs for use outside of those PRD 6 criteria that are established within the municipal code. As you'll note up there, we've got a brief outline of what those are, and I'm sure you're aware of those in terms of minimum lot width, setbacks that pertain to the property. I will note, one of the things that we looked at with regard to development of this property was its compatibility with the existing Remington Hill. When Remington Hill was developed, it's a PRD4 density. This is obviously PRD6, so one of the things we wanted to look at was the use in here, and from a marketability standpoint and a property value standpoint, how does this offset against Remington Hill, again, a lower density neighborhood. So you'll note that if we went strictly by the PRD6 zoning standards with regard to the setbacks and the minimum lot frontages that we noted, we actually would have been able to yield 37 lots out of this subdivision. As noted, the submittal actually requests approval of 31 lots. So the big difference there in terms of why we went to that was basically because of the difference in the building envelopes that are yielded as a result of that. So you'll notice real quickly, if you look at the 50 lot minimum lot frontage that would be required under PRD6, again, that would have yielded 37 lots. By going to the 31s, we're able to yield a 60-foot minimum lot frontage. And ultimately what that does is noted when you apply the 5-foot side setbacks is it allows for the construction within a 50-foot wide building envelope as opposed to a 40-foot wide building envelope, which we believe, based on our market studies, does a lot in terms of bringing the value overall up in terms of those lots and the residences will be constructed on that. So we tried to be sensitive to that in regard to looking at what we were able to do on this. And as you'll note on there, we actually went with building envelopes that yield 25% greater size than what we could have done if we'd have just stuck strictly with the PRD6 standards. We already talked about the extension of the roadways within there. As noted, the property does lie within Tri-View. Again, as we've mentioned a few times, we've been in very close contact with Tri-View. Tri-View obviously provides the water for this, and obviously the existing utilities, as I noted, and as would be expected, the developer will be installing all utilities necessary to connect this subdivision to existing Tri-View facilities. And within the plat and the site plan as normal, we provided for public utility easements to be able to facilitate that required utility service and to establish the proper stormwater drainage and erosion control within the subdivision. We feel like that the development of a high-quality residential subdivision in here that's harmonious and compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and the community will be fostered by a few things. One, the design of the site plan and the plat, as I indicated, not going strictly to the densities that are allowed under PRD6, but taking into consideration what we felt was kind of highest and best use from a value standpoint. We will not be taking these lots vertical, so we are simply a lot developer. We're in discussions with a few different home builders, but I can assure you that the home builder that we ultimately go under contract with will be a reputable local builder that's akin to building a product of this nature. We feel like the review and approval processes of the town, Tri-View and the Pikes Peak Regional Building Department are obviously important. As we noted, we've gotten multiple levels of review on this one outside of what would be the norm simply because it's located within Tri-View's boundaries. And we have established already protective covenants and restrictions on this property. Because we aren't going to be the ultimate builder of the product in here, we wanted to make sure that we had covenants in place that would ensure architectural control on our part to be able to ensure a quality product. And those covenants and restrictions then after the building period would be enforced to provide restrictions with regard to the activities of homeowners going forward to again ensure a long-term community here that's of value to the overall monument area. So we believe that the plat and site plan is submitted meet applicable review and criteria as they're consistent with the town's comp plan and parks, trails, and open space master plan. They propose a harmonious development and lighting pattern that's compatible with the neighborhood and community. We believe they show an adequate, safe, and efficient transportation system within the subdivision with appropriate connectivity to surrounding collector roads, provide for adequate access to all lots and tracts within the subdivision, depict that adequate, safe, and efficient public improvements, utilities, and community facilities and services will be provided to the subdivision, contain a lighting and development pattern that ensures that there will be adequate light, air, and open space and other places for public use, depict landscaping of a high-quality design that enhances the site and is compatible with adjacent properties, and appropriate buffers are provided, provide for adequate protection from fire, flood, geologic hazards. Obviously, we really don't foresee any of those with regard to this particular property. Conform to the applicable provisions of Title 16 subdivisions and the design principles contained therein. And obviously, as we talked about, the Title 17 zoning, specifically the Regency Park PRD 6. Facilitates an appropriate phasing plan that minimizes unnecessary or premature grading. On this one, because of the size of this, that really isn't a factor. And we believe overall it promotes the general health, safety, and welfare of the present and future inhabitants of Monument.
Any questions for the applicant? Okay. Being this is a public hearing, I will now open it up for anyone from the public to speak. Would anybody from the public like to speak in support of this item? Ms. Swearinger.
Good evening. Nancy Swearinger, 418 Trailhead Road, Monument. So the question that I did have is that on your irrigation system description, fully automated, but I'm wondering as the new developments start to come in and we're all looking at our water situation, would now be a time to possibly see if on your irrigation systems, if you would have rain sensors so that the irrigation system does not run if we would happen to get a time where we do get rain and keep those from running? I don't see it in the irrigation system description, so I was just curious. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak in support of this? Seeing none, and would anybody like to speak against this ordinance? Seeing none, would the applicant like to respond to any comments?
I will respond to the comment. So as noted, ultimately, the landscaping tracts associated with this subdivision will be dedicated to the town to be maintained by Triview. And as I indicated before, we've discussed at length Triview's requirements for the installation of those. Ultimately, the construction of those facilities will take place in conformity with construction drawings that go beyond the details that are contained within the site plan, landscaping plan. So certainly, we know, and I'm very well aware that Triview is very sensitive to the use of water in general, but also within landscaping tracts like this. So ultimately, we will look at that with them before we go to complete construction drawings with regard to what they want in that regard. I can tell you, I have not had any specific discussions with them about that issue, but again, we know that they're very sensitive to that, so.
Thank you. At this point, I'll close the public hearing portion of this ordinance and bring it back to the board for further discussion or further questions. Ms. Jones, does the trail or the intended trail area, does that meet our parks and open space requirements, or is this development too small to even need those requirements?
So the development would pay the cash in lieu for parks dedication, as Triview did not request actual land dedication as a part of this plat.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, the one question that I would ask the board, and I think the question as far as irrigation water is a very good one, but I think with developments coming in, I don't know if the town has empowerment to maybe call out moving forward percentages that do need to be zero-scape versus that of grass. I know developments, we've seen a lot of, I want to say irresponsible, but I'll say irresponsible as far as the amount of grass that is going in. And maybe this is something we can control a little bit better, so when these questions come up, we know a certain percentage will be allocated where there'll be a little bit more natural type landscaping.
Are there anything in the covenants that you talked about as far as association there that dictates that?
Not specifically with regard to percentages.
Okay.
But there
A lot of
are-
them do, that's why I
Obviously,
asked.
the municipal code with regard to specific landscaping requirements for residential lots is very specific about the percentages that can go to turf versus other materials.
Okay.
Any further discussion by the board?
I'd like to make a motion to pass ordinance number 24-2018, an ordinance approving site plan and final plat of Jackson Creek North, 511.
I second.
Have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Trustee Romanello?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
That motion passes 6-0. Next item on the agenda, ordinance number 25-2018, an ordinance approving a zoning change to plan development and final PD site plan for Cipriani Addition. Ms. Jones?
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Excuse me. Let's get this presentation up for you. So the next public hearing item is a zone change and final PD site plan. We're calling this the Cipriani Addition. It was previously referred to as Project DA 15, 2018. Before you tonight as Ordinance 25, 2018. So here's an aerial to sort of show you the area we're talking about. Essentially, most people are familiar with it. It's the vacant lot behind the back east, the building that has back east, the multi-tenant building. So it's west of Knollwood on Cipriani Loop. It's highlighted in a turquoise aqua color there. So the applicant is proposing a zone change to PD because it is required by Monument and Municipal Code. That's actually supposed to be 17, I apologize, 17.40.050. Right, because it is a vacant lot that doesn't have a certificate of occupancy on it, and it is what's considered an old zoning district of PCD. The code says that that has to be rezoned to PD. So that is why the applicant is doing that tonight. And then they have a final PD site plan that's before you that would go in correlation with the PD zoning to actually allow development. So the site is about 0.6 acres, a little over half an acre. It's actually currently referred to as Tract A of Monument Villas Townhomes, which is located on the south side there of Cipriani Loop. The staff has been in communication with the applicant about that. They would actually have to replat that for it to be a lot in order for it to be buildable. It's a very simple platting process. It's staying exactly the same as far as the configuration goes, but it's just changing the designation from a tract to a lot. So that's included as a recommended condition along with a few others. So staff has worked with the applicant to ensure that this site is designed to coordinate with and be fully compatible with the developed lot to the north. They are two separate lots, but it all sort of functions together. And so we've tried to ensure that that works together and is compatible, and it'll actually look very, very similar. So here's just sort of a simple drawing to put it in perspective for you. Again, so this is both lots, right? Cipriani Loop sort of extending all around three sides. And then the proposed development there on the south side or the bottom of the lot. The striped or hatched building is the proposed restaurant, again with parking. And as you can see, there would be cross access, and actually the trash enclosures would be moving to this site, and it would serve both lots. And then those types of easements and agreements would have to be in place to ensure that those are the other recommended conditions that are provided in the Planning Commission report. But just sort of a simple overview of how the overall site would work. There would be an additional access point there off of Cipriani Loop on the south side, and then obviously the existing access point on the north side, and cars could travel, as well as the sidewalk could travel between the buildings. So sort of a summary, because they have to go to PD per the code requirement, they're essentially following most things that are outlined in the code, all the standard parking, landscaping, lighting, right, all of those kinds of things. They would simply follow the code standards, and it's called out that way. They obviously have to outline uses. They're calling it, I'm saying they as the applicant, are proposing a restaurant, although they do not have a designated tenant at this site. So the building has been designed in such a way, and they're calling out allowable uses in such a way that it could be small office or small retail, commercial or something like that with up to 3 tenants. But essentially they're thinking that it would be a restaurant, and so the parking is designed to allow for a restaurant, which would be the highest parking requirement. And as I mentioned, the building, it's designed, you'll sort of see it in the renderings, as a single tenant, as a restaurant, but I've spoken with their architect, and it's very easy for them to simply change a set of windows to a set of doors and install interior walls if it were to be up to 3 tenants. So the signage, basically the applicant is following the sign requirements that are outlined in the code with a couple of exceptions that are recommended by staff, which is a recommended condition that they be able to share the existing freestanding electronic message board sign that's on that lot to the north, that they be able to share that, and the additional condition that they could not have an additional freestanding sign on that southern lot. So they are agreeable to those conditions as well. So they could still have wall signage or even a monument sign, but those, not another freestanding sign because of that large one that's in existence.
Could you just go back to the aerial view one more time, please?
Sure.
Thank you very much.
That one?
That's perfect, thank you. It was something I was just looking at. Okay, thank you.
Sure. So an additional recommended condition with this project, again, that the applicant has agreed to, is to do some rooftop screening on the south side or the back side of that existing building to hide that HVAC equipment. So they've agreed to that, and we're recommending that as a condition of approval. I've just shown you a simple depiction here that shows sort of the back side of that building with that screening along the top. Then I also included, from obviously a much warmer day, a photo of that existing building just for reference of sort of the architecture and the materials. And then you'll see, I believe, in their proposed elevations that it's very, very similar with that sort of tower on the corner and the Spanish tile roof, and then the rock type accents. So these are actually their proposed elevations. This is the north elevation, which is what you would see between the existing building and the proposed building. Again, those sort of towers on the corners and the, again, very complementary, if not the same, exact materials and colors. So here's your south elevation. This would be seen from the southern portion of Cipriani Loop. Obviously, there's four-sided architecture included, a number of windows and quality materials. And then these are your east and west elevations as well. So this item was also before your planning commission in November. There were only a few clarification questions, such as that this proposed building would be the same height as the existing building. No members of the public spoke on this item, and the planning commission does recommend approval with the conditions that are outlined in the planning commission report. They're a little bit lengthy, so I didn't include all of them, but I think we've highlighted most of them. So the planning commission recommends approval of ordinance 25, subject to the conditions as outlined in the planning commission report. And staff is available to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mrs. Jones? Okay, is the applicant here to?
How are you?
Good.
I'm Jim Sproul. I'm the construction manager, owner's rep for the project.
Hello, Jim.
Did you have anything to say, or just
Oh,
available for
I'm
questions?
just available for questions.
Great.
Does the board have any questions? Okay. Seeing none at this time, this is a public hearing item, so I will open it up to the public for anyone who would like to speak for this ordinance. Anybody would like to speak against this ordinance? With nobody wanting to speak for or against, I will close the public hearing portion of this ordinance and bring it back to the board for additional comments, questions, or a motion.
Well, this is my neck of the woods, and I'm very excited about this because it's just a funky dirt lot that people just park their Jeeps and four-wheel drives in when they're back east anyway. It's the only thing that's not developed there, and I think it'd be a wonderful thing to get done, so I'm in full support of this.
I'd like to move to ordinance number 25, 2018, an ordinance approving a zone change to plan development and final PD site plan for Cipriani addition.
The second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Trustee Romanello?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Let's see, ordinance number 26-2018, an ordinance approving a site plan for Abra.
Mr. Mayor, I have been in contact with the applicant on this project since about 5:30. Apparently, they have had some issues getting here tonight, and it doesn't look like they will arrive until approximately 8 o'clock. Would it be possible to move this item a little later on the agenda?
Is the board okay with that?
If we're gonna have executive session, probably, well, I guess we'll still be here.
We will, we will move that to after item number 7, before public comments. Thank you, Ms. Jones.
Thank you.
Ordinance number 27-2018, an ordinance adopting a budget for the town of Monument, beginning the first day of January 2019 and ending the last day of December 2019. Ms. Smith.
Thank you. The 2019 preliminary budget was presented to the board beginning on October 1st of this year and ending tonight. There have been some changes to the original proposal. All changes have been discussed, addressed, and approved by the board prior to tonight's meeting. The board and interested taxpayers have had an opportunity to comment and/or change the budget document prior to adoption. All legal postings have been completed and verified. By law, we remain budget neutral, so we have approved revenues that cover the attached expenditures. And I respectfully request the Board of Trustees adopt 2019 Budget Ordinance 27-2018 as attached here too. The attached ordinance is broken out by fund. It gives you the revenues, reserves, expenditures, negative reserves, and the general fund, community development, conservation trust fund, storm drainage impact fee fund, traffic impact fee fund, and the 2A water ASD fund, which are all considered general funds, and then the water enterprise fund as well. So I'm here to take any questions. The changes that have been made were the final changes that were made that were discussed at the board workshop last Thursday night.
Questions from the board? This is also a public hearing item, so I will open it up to the board or to the public for anyone who would like to speak in support of this ordinance. Seeing none, anyone opposed to this ordinance?
Ann Howe, Agate Creek Drive. I just was astounded that the treasurer said that the public was allowed to provide input to this. She personally put down any type of input from the public at the last workshop. I've personally witnessed the board not paying attention to items that have been brought forward to save money in the budget. So to say that the public had input is a lie and a farce.
Thank you. Any other comments against this ordinance? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board or I'll close the public hearing portion and bring this back to the board for any further comment or questions.
Mr. Mayor, I have several comments on this. Very difficult process. This was my third budget process. Everyone's been increasingly more challenging as our community continues to grow. It's almost as if, you know, we're set up for failure or destined for failure as far as everybody being happy with everything in the budget. Because there's so much that we need. There's so much that we need now. There's so much that we have delayed and need to catch up on. And there's so much that we're going to need into the future, well into the future. So I want to highlight, it was a very, very difficult process, at least for me. I found it very challenging. Do I feel personally that this board did everything that we could to make tough decisions, tough cuts, to prioritize in a way? No. Could we have done more? I think we could have. There were a lot of concerns. You know, I think involving the community in the future, finding a way to bring in more community input is essential. There are only a few people in this room that regularly come to this room, which to me is sad to see with a very rapidly growing community. And it doesn't matter what your beliefs are or your views on any of this. I will say there were a few concerns I had, and I want to address the concerns, as I did at the last budget workshop as well, with the budget as presented. And I'm still waiting on some questions, and that's fine. It may be weeks or months before I get answers. But the dialogue did happen for me, and I'm comfortable with the dialogue that happened. I had questions that Ms. Smith is addressing regarding salaries, in particular how we jumped from 2015 numbers to 2019 projected numbers with essentially a very small amount of additional personnel added. There's a lot of questions that I have with that. I have questions to Mr. Tharnish to get an idea of where we're going with the Public Works facility, which is greatly needed. We're way behind on that. I had questions with the police department. We need significant changes in staffing levels with our police department as this community continues to grow. Not necessarily to catch up on where we should be, but also the approved developments that we've already approved, not even looking at future developments that come our way. So that was a question. You know, the water, catching up on the water department. We have projects that we did not get done this year that we need to get done. And I'm not talking about future regional efforts, you know, how we're going to get renewable water to this community. I'm talking about catching up on the system that we already have. And that's where that 1.8 million came into question. I am not in support of financing that. And that was my biggest concern, is the proposal to finance that 1.8 million. Long-term solutions, police department, water. It sounds like we are moving the needle in the right direction. So with the additions, based on the discussion, those $1.8 million in projects for the current water system have been added to this budget. The good thing is this budget doesn't reflect a necessity to finance that. We have the option to finance that should the board decide to, but we're not obligated to. And we've made progress, and that's one of the things I want to highlight throughout the process. The process was by no means perfect, but I think we did make some progress through our discussions, that being one of them, that we're going to get these projects done, and we do have the cash to do it with cash. Does the board decide, you know, at this time if that makes sense to finance? No, that comes when these projects come up. We are adding a significant amount to the police department. We're adding a few officers. We need much more. We're adding some greatly needed resources. But my understanding from the last budget workshop is everybody, at least in this room, and I know you weren't actively involved in that, Mr. Romanello, but everybody understands the growth that's happening and the need for those additional officers. And essentially, it sounds like we're going to be addressing those staffing levels, not just at budget time. This is going to be happening regularly on a quarterly basis, monthly basis, and certainly as that need comes up. I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with getting something now and continuing to address that as we continue to move. And lastly, regarding water efforts, Mr. Tharnish brought it to our attention at the last meeting, and I am praying that something comes of this, but it sounds like there are significant regional efforts coming to the table. And that's the only solution, is that we start working with our partners. I see a representative from Triview here tonight. That's great. He's here regularly. We need to start going to the Triview meetings. Mr. Romanello is a great addition from Village Metro, which I've said all along, it's great to have representation. So is this budget perfect? No. Am I happy with this budget? No, not at all. Could we have done more? Absolutely. That's where this board in the future and this future boards are going to have to start doing more research, more discussion, more involvement from the community. I just want to highlight it. It hasn't been easy, but there are some positives to this budget, and there are some negatives, and I think that's always going to happen.
Thank you, Trustee Goodman. Any other comments at this time?
I'd like to move. Sorry.
Mr. Rivera, with these being two separate ordinances, but both for the budget and the appropriations of the funds in that budget, do they need to be handled as two separate ordinances, or can they be handled as one and the same?
Your Honor, the only requirement, I'm sorry, Your Honor, Mayor, the only requirement that I'm aware of is 3116-103 that requires a majority of the board to, of the trustees to vote. I'm not familiar with any other requirement, and if you'd like, I can look online and see if there's a single subject requirement. It might be in the abundance of caution, it might be helpful to bifurcate them, but absent a single subject requirement, I think they should be fine.
Okay.
I do have one more question, and maybe something you can answer regarding verbiage, if I may. Of the ordinance 27-2018, the first whereas statement highlights that we have appointed a town manager, or I'm sorry, a town treasurer. We have not done that. So to pass an ordinance that reflects something that's not necessarily accurate, I would imagine probably wouldn't be a good thing.
Could you direct me to exactly where you are?
Here.
Right, so 27-2018.
We could strike has appointed and just put down that, strike out town treasurer from there. And it would just have my name then to prepare and submit the budget. And I'm sorry, we tend to paste and copy.
No, I understand, I'm
Just leaving out the town treasurer part?
Yeah.
I would say maybe whereas the Board of Trustees, Town and Monument has authorized Pamela Smith to prepare and submit a proposed budget of said governing body proper time.
That
Would
should
that-
work.
And again, Mr. Rivera.
Could you show me my mail? Just a moment, please.
Sorry. Let's see, 27. That's his first sentence up here that they're having a problem with. So he's saying, to make that say, authorize me take out town treasurer because I haven't been appointed.
Are you there?
Yeah.
One possible way to get around this is to refer not to Ms. Smith and not to the town treasurer, but to the position of acting town treasurer.
Well, actually, the technical term is holdover town treasurer.
I would say we haven't necessarily said acting either.
Or we could just strike town treasurer, it doesn't.
Is there any state statute requiring that be a town treasurer?
You know,
Are we gonna discuss appointing the town treasurer?
We are.
That's
but
later
we're
in
at
the
this
agenda.
point, yes.
Normally, when I send this to the state, they like to know who's responsible for preparing the budget. That's why there's usually a position and/or a name in there.
Would it be adequate, Mr. Rivera, to state, whereas the Board of Trustees of the Town and Monument has authorized Pamela Smith to prepare and submit, rather than referencing A, an appointment, or B, a title?
The only hesitancy I have is I'm not sure of, I'm aware of the requirement, just by practice, that Ms. Smith is referring to, in terms of having the audit submitted to the state and having there be a point person, but I'm not sure if there are any other legal requirements or any legal significance attached to that. And that's why I hesitate. I'm not sure what legal significance, if any, may be attached to that position, and it's really, and it's established, and that position being established as something close to a point person for the state. I'm not sure of, the language on first blush that I think I want to draw back to is something along the lines of holdover or acting. I'm not sure, this is my first day, I'm not sure of the reluctance to go that route, but I think that might be the most safe.
Can we make a motion with the stipulation that that'll be addressed before submitting? That you'll find out what requirement needs to be met?
Because it doesn't have to be submitted till the end of the month. It has to be approved so I can do the mill levy on the 15th.
So we have essentially one more meeting? Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, this needs to be approved so I can get the mill levy approved, because that has to go to the 15th, the next meeting would be the 17th.
So we
Unless
just
you want to
approve
have a special
pending
meeting.
legal review, or,
Okay. If you're comfortable with that, I can look into that.
okay, so just approve pending legal.
Yes, was there any issues with, ordinance number 28?
No, that's the only one I saw. Yeah, 28 doesn't state it.
No.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Bornstein.
Thanks.
We're doing both of them?
I am a little bit confused because just from the rhetoric of it, Ms. Smith is the acting treasurer. As we said, we all said you're denied, so, but.
Should we?
But
I'm
we'll
gonna-
just let him get
I'm
back
gonna-
to us.
I'll
and-
leave that for later on, but I'm just voicing. So-
And I'm comfortable with the term holdover, and then if you want to review and double check and say, that, yes, that's sufficient, that's fine. I mean, that's, I
I don't
think
care
the
what you
technical
call me, as
term-
long as you pass the budget.
I would like to move to pass ordinance number 27-2018, an ordinance adopting a budget for the town of Monument, Colorado, beginning on the first day of January 2019 and ending on the last day of December 2019.
Second?
We have a motion and a second for ordinance 27-2018. Ms. Hogan?
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Romanello?
Yes.
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
That motion passes 6-0. Ordinance number 28-2018.
Oh, sorry. Since you have passed the ordinance since you have passed the budget and appropriations for 2019, it's necessary to approve an ordinance allocating the expenditures approved to the funds they will be paid from. The appropriations for expenditures in this ordinance match the approved appropriations in the budget and appropriations for 2019. By law, we remain budget neutral, and so we have approved revenues that cover these attached expenditures. I respectfully request the Board of Trustees approve ordinance 28-2018 for appropriating sums of money to the various funds in the amount set forth in said ordinance.
Maybe I should have clarified my question. Does this ordinance need to be a public hearing item if we've already approved the budget?
It's my understanding that it's a ordinance, and you've posted the ordinance, correct?
Correct.
And you've sought public hearing on it? Or is that what you're asking now, if you need to see conditional?
That's what I'm asking, is if we've already received the public hearing on the budget, does anything change with the appropriation of basically the same sums of money?
I don't, is your question, are you
Do I need
required
to
to
have
public hearing?
on it?
You know, generally speaking, more process is always safer, so I would invite it just in abundance of caution.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the board on this ordinance? Being this is a public hearing, I'll open it up to the public for anyone who would like to speak for or against this item. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for further discussion or motion.
I move to approve ordinance 28-2018. Do I need to read the whole thing? I gotta read the whole thing. All right, welcome to it. I move to approve ordinance number 20-2018, an ordinance appropriating sums of money to the various funds in the amount set forth below for the town of Monument, Colorado, beginning on the first day of January 2019 and ending on the last day of December 2019.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Romanello?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
And I would like to thank the board for their involvement this year. It was a lot more than we've ever had prior years that I can recall. I appreciate Trustee Bornstein bringing this up. We do have on the table, if you will, a budget committee, which hopefully in 2019 we can get going. We didn't get it in 2018, but hopefully in 2019 that would involve a couple board members, a few citizens, and some staff. So we have a more rounded input, if you will.
And we would like that to start around August, wouldn't we?
We'd probably like that to start around March or so, if we're gonna be starting to review this quarterly and possibly make changes and restate it possibly quarterly, because I would like to see this be a much more fluid document than it's been in the past, with all of the questions and everything that's come up in this budget cycle and the number of meetings we've had in the workshops. I think it would be good to keep in mind that this can be fluid and we can ebb and flow with it. And I think having a budget committee that involves citizens, board members, and staff is just a positive direction to take.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, resolution number 32-2018, a resolution to authorize the certification of the property tax mill levy to the El Paso County Assessor for budget year 2019, beginning the first day of January 2019 and ending the last day of December 2019. Ms. Smith.
This is a resolution to authorize the certification of the property tax mill levy. I have attached, as required by CRS 39.5.128.1, the property tax mill levy must be certified to the Board of County Commissioners no later than 5 p.m. on Friday, December 14th this year. As attested by the attached worksheet, the calculation for the 2018 mill levy will be 6.289 mills, which it's been for the last, since long before I got here. The allowable dollar amount for 2019 property tax collections is $942,000, which will produce a mill levy of 6.289 mills. At a mill levy of 6.289, the generated revenue for 2019 property tax will be $942,000, which will generate an estimated increase of $104,380 over 2018 revenues. This meets the 5.5% property tax revenue limit and any Tabor restrictions. I respectfully request that the Board of Trustees approve Resolution 32-2018 to authorize the certification of the property tax mill levy to the El Paso County Assessor for the fiscal year 2018, budget year 2019, beginning on the first day of January 2019 and ending on the last day of December 2019.
Questions from the board in regards to this resolution? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve resolution number 32-2018, resolution to authorize the certification of the property tax mill levy to the El Paso County Assessor for the budget year 2019, beginning on the first day of January 2019 and ending on the last day of December 2019.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Trustee Romanello?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes. That resolution passes 6-0. Resolution number 33-2018, a resolution entering into an animal service contract with the Humane Society of the Pikes Peak region. Ms. Smith.
Not to hog the meeting or anything. This is a contract for the annual renewal of the Humane Society for animal control services, such as patrolling, picking up stray animals, and pounding them. The contractor is also in charge of licensing of pets. The cost of this year's contract is $16,762, which is an increase of $409 over last year. The last increase in this contract was in 2013. The increase is due to an increase in calls for service. Everything else in the contract has remained the same as it's been since 2009, I believe. I respectfully ask the board to approve Resolution 33-2018, a resolution entering into a contract with the Humane Society of the Pikes Peak region for pet animal control licensing services for fiscal year 2019 in the amount of $16,762.
Ms. Smith, is there, and again, probably half of these calls were my neighbors down the street, but are there stats that they show us? And my curiosity question is, with the growth of the community, are we still staying level? I mean, it's a service we need, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And the increase is nothing. But is that something that they let us know? As far as we've had X amount of calls for this or this?
Yeah, it's a quarterly report. It's usually contained in in the town manager's report. It's been, the last third quarter report was in the last town manager's report, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Shame on me then for not catching that.
And it's they have a quarterly report, a cumulative report for the year. But even if we have a lot of increased calls in 2019. This cost won't go up until they reviewed it for 2020, and it would come back.
Man, I'm not challenging the cost. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And this also stops the police from having to go out there and pick up chihuahuas that bite and things like that.
Yeah, because we did have a call and they wouldn't get out of their car, so it was pretty disappointing.
Well,
It would not, but it was a bad dog.
Additional comments from the board or a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to pass resolution number 33, 2018, a resolution entering into an animal services contract with the Humane Society of the Pikes Peak region.
Second.
A motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Romanello?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
That resolution passes 6-0. Next item on the agenda, executive session. Do I have a motion for executive session?
Yeah, Mayor, may I ask you to clarify the motion, if I may? Let me read from the statute. The executive session statute requires that the matter be read with, and I quote, "as much detail as possible without compromising the purpose for which the executive session is authorized." And if I might ask you to re-offer the motion with a little bit more detail, and I have a handout, if I may. May I approach?
Yeah. Okay, this is executive session per 24-64024B. Conference with an attorney for the public entity for the purpose of receiving legal advice on a specific legal question in regard to the Board of Trustees. Do I have a motion? I didn't, oh, well, I'll make that the motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Question, is that adequate detail?
Not knowing what the topic, I'd leave it to your discretion. I just want to make sure that the record is clear.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Koopman?
Yes.
Trustee Bornstein?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Romanello?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
We'll
Can we-
stay here, Mr. Mayor?
What's that?
We'll stay in this location.
Okay. Chief, you have the gallery cleared?
Oh, okay. We're not going anywhere. I'm gonna go to the restroom.
Yeah, we'll take a 2-minute recess.
Do you want me in or out?
Yes.
A reporter